Hello everyone, this is Andy Mello from Mello FAB. Going to show you a little something here, a little sneak peek of the new Mello FAB oil pressure monitoring system for the Yamaha Viking and the Gen 1 Wolverine. Going to show you some components of the kit. Also in this video we'll be covering the ease of installation and the install process and what tools will be required to install the system. Okay, here we go. Here's what we got in the kit. This is the first kit I'm going to install on my machine. I'm going to do some testing through the weekend to see how flawless the kit works. But it's going to consist of a few components. You're going to have a plug-and-play harness that will hook to the gauge. These two leads, Yamaha connectors, will plug to the wiring harness on the passenger side where it goes to your 12-volt source to give you ignition hot. You'll have a fuse holder that'll route through the back of the battery box and hook to battery for color retention on your gauge. And you'll have your pigtail here which will hook to your gauge itself. This is an extra wire that I've routed into my first build. I'm going to also test a low oil pressure warning light too as well. On the other harness you have 9 foot of harness that will connect to your gauge. Another leg of the warning light here on this particular system that I'm testing. The wires that will run to your liking through the tunnel or however you choose to route them. Back to the oil filter area you have your 3-prong sensor for your oil pressure sensor, and then you have a wire that I'm going to be routing to a low pressure oil switch. You'll have a glow shift digital oil pressure gauge with 10 selectable colors, just like in the Mello FAB 2-in-1 cooling fan control kit. And you'll have a really nice oil filter adapter. Be easy install. You'll just take the oil filter off, put this up to the block, tighten this down where you would tighten your oil filter, and tighten the oil filter on. And for testing, this sensor here will be what's in the kit, but for testing I'm also installed here with this low pressure warning switch just as a possible option. And now we're going to go to the install on my Yamaha Viking. Okay everyone, the tools you will need to install the Mello FAB oil pressure system. You will need something for your gauge. 2-inch hole saw is perfect. A drill. You'll need a 5/16 wrench for the nuts on the gauge. You'll need an 1 1/16 socket for the big nut on the oil filter adapter. And when you get into that size, you're pretty much always going to be dealing with 1/2-inch drive. You'll need some form of oil filter wrench. I chose a cup wrench. Works really good on these small filters. If you have a strap wrench, that'll work just fine too. And then if you're using a cup style, the particular one I have to run it with a 3/8 ratchet. So now we will go to start the install at the oil filter. This is the best view that I could get here. I've obviously got a drain pan underneath the machine. I was able to pre-loosen my filter just to make it a little bit quicker. You're not going to lose a lot, but you will need to top it off when you get done. Okay, the oil filter is off, and now you will take your adapter that comes in the kit, and the back side is an O-ring. You want to lubricate it with nice clean engine oil. You'll hold the adapter over the stud, and you want to get the nut hand tight. Get it started. Then you want to kind of position where you can get the connectors connected good. I'm going to choose to go right there. That'll give me a little bit more room right in there. There's several different options here. You can swing it around, but just as long as you have enough room to connect everything. Then we will get our inch and a 1/16 wrench. And we will tighten the adapter. Be careful not to over tighten it. You could damage the O-ring behind it. Plenty of tight. And now to reinstall oil filter, or a new one. In my case, I just had changed the oil of my machine, so I'm going to reuse the one that was on it. Get some rags, wipe everything down. And now we will go to routing the wires from the front of the machine. For this next step, I'm going to remove the seat. Sorry y'all, my interior is not just immaculately clean, but this kind of, in a funny way, makes up for a more real video. They ain't always the cleanest when you're working on them. But to make the routing of the wires more convenient, I'm going to just remove the seat frame. The bolts are 12 millimeter. Obviously, you do not have to use a 3/8 impact, but that's what I'm going to do for speed of this video. I'll start removing this seat, and I will come back with a nice inspection hole underneath where we can route some wires and get everything nice and tight and convenient. Go to run your wires to the back of the machine. I don't have the factory splash guard here. I made a custom one here, but I took it off. And if you take the splash guard off, mud guard, whatever you want to call it, here in the fender well on the passenger side, it'll make it a little easier. And I started to route the wires down here. I kind of got them pre-run so far because I couldn't hold the phone and do all this. But I'll show you a little sneak peek way you can access the wires and see them to route them through the tunnel without removing the floor. Yes, without removing the floor is obviously the hard way, but I chose to do it the hard way for a reason. But I'm going to crawl under the machine. If you look there, that clean loom is the wiring harness. There's a perfect round hole. There's the factory snorkel pipe. You can get your hands up in there to reach the harness from the front. It's a pretty short distance here to this corner over to this hole. And then if you'll look in this hole, there's a frame piece. There's the wire there too. Run it on the passenger side of that because there's your drive shaft. That will prevent your wiring from getting in to the drive shaft in basically any situation. And then as you route it back farther, you see the front of your air box, and I'm routing the harness up onto the passenger side over the tube, and then you can work from inside and won't be underneath the machine. I'll resume the video from inside the cab. Here's the wiring. I've routed on this side of the air box. I'm going to go right through the open hole there to daylight and follow the coolant pipe, and that'll go right to the oil filter. You see I'm touching the coolant pipe with that blue connector. We're going to follow along that, and once we get everything hooked up in the back and get our slack figured out, then we can zip tie everything nice and neat. Here's how we look with everything connected. So then, like I said, now you can start to get the spade on, the low pressure warning, and we've got our sensor hooked up for the gauge. Now we can start doing some wiring up underneath the hood. Okay, now for the gauge and wire hookup. I've got that's the leads coming from the back running through the hole. I've pre-drilled the hole, and we're going to install the other harness through the dash. Power leads first, and I'm going to leave gauge hook up in the cab, and we'll hook everything up to the gauge nice and neat, and then we'll push the gauge through the dash. And once I make those connections, I will reconvene the video on hook up on the other side. Okay, now you can see all the harnesses are hooked up, the gauge is through. I do not have the bracket yet on there. That is my next step. I'm going to pull these harnesses down, kind of out of the way. So now I am going to pause the video, because I obviously can't hold the phone and do this at the same time, and I will reconvene in just a minute. Okay, the gauge holding bracket is on. Now it's time to start routing wiring harnesses. Our power harness here, as you can see, we have more than plenty of lead for the fuse, which will allow you to locate the gauge in different locations. So we're going to go behind the frame here. And then in to the battery box, and I'll show you what we got up top here. Here we are coming in here. Sorry for the sun, folks. So we've got plenty of room to hook to our positive battery right here. Now we'll go back down in the fender, and we have another connection left. All we have to do at this point is unplug this connector and plug this in line. And we'll have ignition hot and ground for the gauge to function, and the fuse holder is for the memory retention. So once I get this part done, we'll test the system out and see what we have. Okay, here we go. I have everything hooked up. Key is on. This particular testing setup, I've got a low pressure warning indicator light, which is on. The engine's off with 0 psi oil pressure. I'm going to start the machine. You can watch the oil pressure come up, and then you can watch the light go out. Light went out, instantly had oil pressure. We're sitting there, that little oil pressure reading on the Yamaha Viking. There you have it. That's the Mello FAB oil pressure system on the Yamaha Viking, and we'll be on the Gen 1 Wolverine. Sorry for some of the angles, y'all. I was trying to do the best I could filming and hold the phone by myself. So y'all have a good day, and if anybody is interested in the system, my number is 1-270-246-0544. Feel free to call me anytime, or you can email me at mello0544@gmail.com. Or you can PM me on Facebook. Have a nice day.